Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between. How the heck are ya? I am Diana Clarion, the Lavender Lady. This is Coffee with Lavender, and the bad porn music is over to the side. Yes, I'm going to look for another opening theme, Kate, and we're going to take care of that. But here we are at Coffee with Lavender, and we're going to be looking at the Blue Wave 2019. Is it one of those? What do we have? Are there any good things to see? Any bad things to see? Maybe look toward 2020 and maybe see what there might be, kind of, maybe. Yeah, there's a lot of maybes in there, and as we're on camera too, and with me is Luciano Gonzalez from Luciano's Logic. Let me pull him. Let me pull him up. There we go. Hello, Luciano. How the heck are you?
Hi. So I will say, as a Democrat in the party in North Carolina, and as someone who does a lot of political stuff, I liked what I saw during the, I guess, midterm elections that just happened. They're not really midterms. They were mostly local races and
Yeah.
like gubernatorial races, a word I can't pronounce apparently. But I liked what I saw. I think that it was encouraging. Not everything that happened was perfect, but there was lots of good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I guess one of the things we can look at is that good stuff in Virginia, right?
Yeah. So Virginia is a very fascinating state because it is probably one of the most perfect battleground states, but most people don't categorize it as such. And one of the consequences was that it went from being a moderately red state to being a solidly blue state over the course of the last election. Lots of interesting people either won their elections or won their re-elections, like Danica Rowan, who I believe is the country's first openly transgender congressperson. I
Oh
might have
yes,
gotten that
the
wrong,
reelection
but
thereof. Yes.
yeah, she won her reelection. Also, the Virginia woman who flicked off Donald Trump won her
Yes,
election, which
yes.
is just, it's the chef's kiss of elections. It's just, that was a good election.
I had
But
totally
yeah,
forgotten about that one. Thank you for reminding me, because that was beautiful. She lost her job over the flip off. Was that not the case?
yep.
And
She
then
lost her job, she ran for office, and she won. What a story.
that is beautiful. Indeed, it is. Interesting thing where I wish I could remember where I had read this so I could point everybody there. But if I remember correctly, there are people in Virginia talking about taking up the Equal Rights Amendment,
Yep.
which lost by one vote the last time Virginia tried to take it up.
Yep. And now, assuming that no one decides to turn, no, assuming no shenanigans happen, it is incredibly likely that it would pass as it is. Obviously, not right now. If they tried to pass it today, it wouldn't because the newly elected people haven't taken office yet.
Oh,
But
right,
when the
right.
newly elected people do take office, assuming there's no shenanigans, there's a strong possibility it would pass.
Now, that's really interesting that you should say that. Assuming that there is no shenanigans, because in another area of the country, just a little bit to the west of Virginia, we have this wonderful state called Kentucky, where, let's see, Andy Beshear
Yep.
allegedly won against
Matt Belvin.
Matt Belvin.
Matt
That's
Bevin.
Matt Bevin. There it is.
Yeah, Matt Bevin. I had,
Uh,
for some reason, his name was hard to pronounce. So that one is like, that one is a really interesting race to keep track of
yes,
because
it
one,
is.
Kentucky is solid Trump country.
Yeah.
Just
Mm-hmm.
like pretty much the entire state. Obviously, there are cities where it's not Trump County because cities do tend to lean Democrat. But even in the cities, there's lots of support for Trump. So seeing Matt lose surprises a lot of people. In much the same way that seeing the governor of North Carolina before Roy Cooper lose, while Trump won the state of North Carolina in 2016 really shook up a lot of people. And interestingly enough, there seems to be another parallel, because it seems like Matt's going to try and fight his loss.
Yes. I
Yep.
was just reading before we went on air from Slate magazine.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Dateline 7 November. Richard Hasen writes, could Matt Bevin steal the Kentucky governor's election? And it's in this article that I'm seeing, if no funny stuff happens, if democracy holds up. I mean, every 4 sentences it's in there. Let me see if I can pull something up really quickly here. It's probably near the end. There we
Mm-hmm.
go. The last couple of paragraphs. A lot of bad things would have to happen for Beshear not to be the next governor of Kentucky. Either the election would have to be so marred by fraud or problems that it fairly calls the results into question, or the Kentucky legislature would have to abandon democratic values and allow the election loser to become the election winner, with federal courts staying on the sidelines. We may not live in ordinary times, but if the latter scenario comes to pass, our democracy is in great trouble as we look ahead to 2020. And this is a sentiment that the author here has voiced over and over and over in this article. As a matter of fact, what I'll do, if people want to have a look at it, I'm going to throw it into the side chat. Okay, here we go. Now, how likely is it that the worst could happen?
So there are a couple of things that would need to happen, and there are a couple of very interesting, I guess, like phenomenons occurring at the same time that all of this is happening that make this a possibility, but I'm gonna say probably 50-50, which I think is much more optimistic than a lot of people would say.
Okay.
First things first, in order to put this all in context, there are Republican lawmakers in the state of Kentucky who are saying that the governor should concede, which is
Yes, that's a good
frankly
sign.
astonishing.
Yeah.
I'm going to be putting up an article when I'm done discussing this in the side chat as well. I have it pulled up to the side, so I can't read the chat right now.
Okay.
If anyone has any questions, I hope that they'll get relayed to me. Either that or I'll answer them later. But there are two separate senators. No, there's a senator and there's a representative in the state house and in the state senate. So not like the big people who make laws that affect everyone, but the little people who make laws in Kentucky, who are warning against Governor Matt Bevin trying to contest the election. One of them is Jason Neves, who is the representative from Louisville. And he's saying that the best thing to do, the best thing right now, would be for Governor Matt Bevin to concede the election today, so that way we can move on. That's good advice. I really hope that the acting governor does that, because if he does, that would be really awesome. The people of Kentucky have spoken, and this isn't like the presidential election where we pretend the person who lost the election wins just to feed his ego. This is an election that's actually democratic, so the person who gets the most votes is the person who wins.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
And
it's just that simple.
this is the interesting thing. When we have the 2020 election coming up, and it's in 12 months now, is there somebody in Kentucky who spends a lot of time blocking bills in D.C. Who might be legitimately concerned about his future employment?
Oh man, is there a turtle faced sniveling is not a word. Is there a turtle faced piece of human garbage in Kentucky who is currently watching this with his eyes wide open? The answer to the question is yes. We're talking about Mitch McConnell,
Of course.
but it really sucks that the person who's like almost certainly going to be facing off against Senator Mitch McConnell is also not great. The person who's running against him, who appears likely, it's entirely possible the primaries already happened and I just don't know it. But as far as I know, that primary hasn't happened yet. The primary featuring Amy McGarth versus like 2 other Democrats.
Yeah.
Um, Amy Amy is not great, but I mean, if she defeats Senator Mitch McConnell, that's awesome. But she's not great, so it's unfortunate that his competition's probably going to be her. Yeah.
Okay. So she's maybe a little bit better, but maybe we've
Oh
got
no,
an.
she's a lot better than Mitch McConnell. Like the problem is that she's not great. Just like taking Mitch McConnell out of the equation.
Okay, so
Yeah.
are we having something similar to Mississippi here, where you had two Republicans running, one with a D and one with an R, and the Republican with an R won?
So I wouldn't call I wouldn't call Miss McGarth a light Republican. She's more like an Obama style Democrat,
Okay,
which
fine. Okay.
like Obama style Democrats are actual Democrats. They're not like Joe Manchin, who is one of the people in West Virginia who's just not good.
Right.
He is like a light Republican. He's a Republican who refuses to commit to it, which
Right.
not great.
Mm-hmm.
But Amy McGarth, lot better than Mitch McConnell if she wins her primary, assuming it hasn't happened yet, and I believe it hasn't, but I might be wrong. Kentucky is not my state. I think that she would be a lot better. The governor of Mississippi, on the other hand, is just a dumpster fire of a human being, and I'm glad he lost. It sucks that he's getting replaced with a Republican who's going to be worse, but he still didn't deserve to be in office. So,
Okay. Yeah, there are a lot of people who don't deserve to be where they are right about now, but this is okay. Now, there's something for you. I mean, is there much hope when we look ahead? And let's keep in mind here, kids,
mm,
once we get rid of the current occupant of the White House, once we get rid of a few other people, the problem's not solved.
yep.
Um, what are we looking at into the future? I mean, is it going to be past my lifetime that we might get this fixed?
I mean, I personally hope that we get rid of the person in the White House long before the end of your lifetime, preferably like tomorrow. If
That
it
would be
happened tomorrow,
nice.
I'd be
That would
happy.
be nice. Yes.
Um, I do think it's possible that Donald Trump will lose. I think that there were some encouraging signs in this set of elections that Donald Trump doesn't have the popularity that people thought he did. And one of the big reasons I can say that, especially as it relates to Kentucky, is that Donald Trump went to Kentucky. He went to bat for Matt and he lost.
Yes.
And that is something that we absolutely should remember. That's something that should be seen as an optimistic sign. It does not mean we should assume that he's going to lose Kentucky. He's not going to lose Kentucky. But it's still good that one of his main people, someone that he ardently fought for, lost. That's a nice sign.
All right then. Okay, what am I missing? What other races are there that are really significant in this set of elections? We were talking about them before the light went on,
Yeah.
and when you get old, the memory is the second thing to go, and I forget what the first is. So,
So I think that some of the more significant elections were like ones that probably seemed really small. There were a handful that seemed really interesting that I think we should discuss, even if it's just very brief. In the city of Philadelphia,
ah,
Kendra Brooks is who was a third party progressive person. She was a solid progressive. She won her election and she is a council member. She's the first independent council member in modern Philadelphia history. She was a member of the Working Families Party, and it's worth noting that independent in the context of American politics doesn't mean you don't have a party. It means that you are not a member of the two-party system.
right.
So that's something that not that many people realize. Lots of popular independents don't actually have a party. Bernie Sanders, I believe, doesn't have like a party just flat out. He's just an independent. But there are others who are considered independent who actually do have parties. So But yeah, Kendra Brooks won, and she was a member of the Working Families Party. Her election was significant. It was really fantastic that there is an independent council person. There actually are other independent council people as well. She's not the only one, but it is nice to see a progressive movement like the Working Families Party get that win. It's just nice. Just
Okay.
warms my heart.
Well, in order that the parties that are not Democrat or Republican
Yeah.
get anyway, we're going to need something other than winner take all. We're going to need something other than first past the post. Um, do you know of any work that's being done to get that other than in, I think it's Maine, has
With a ring thing? Yeah. um, I don't know, but I do suspect I can think of a couple of different Congress people, or I can think of a couple of different candidates who, if elected, would almost certainly work to make that a reality. Two of the big ones are Joshua Collins and then Clarence Bridgewater. Joshua Collins is in Wisconsin, I think. He is probably the most far left politician running. I'll put up his Twitter in a second so that way people can go and follow it. And then Clarence Bridgewater is a Texas person who is running, who I know his last name is Bridgewater. I might be butchering his first name. I probably am. But both of them are people who are solid progressives. They are people who are in the same general camp as people like AOC and Ilhan Omar. So they're really solid progressives. Probably not perfect because, Ilhan Omar, all genocides mattered. The Armenian genocide a couple weeks ago, which was infuriating. But they're just good candidates that people should vote for, running in places that probably won't elect them.
okay.
Texas is not the best place to be a progressive person, but there have been
Right.
other Texas progressives who've won office, so it is possible that I'll eat my word soon.
Hopefully, because I know that some people have been talking that there are some purple flecks showing up in Texas. Is this? Am I saying this right or?
Could you repeat that? I wasn't able to catch part of it.
Oh, okay. The way I worded it was: are there some people out there saying that there may be some purple flecks showing up in Texas? A little purpleness, or am I reading this wrong? Am I too
No,
hopeful
that
here?
that that's a correct reading. Texas has always been there are parts of Texas that have always been purple. And it's easy to think of the state that produced Louis Gomer and Ted Cruz as like deep red, which is fair. A good portion of the state is deep red, but as is the case with lots of major cities, and lots of major states, there's always those little areas that have a little bit of Democrat in them, and that little bit of Democrats often enough to win local elections. So I think that reading Texas as showing purple flakes is a fair reading. I just hope that we're not getting a little bit too optimistic when we look at Texas and we're like, yeah, that's purple.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose we might be able to count on Austin, maybe, because
Yeah.
Austin. The way I understand it, Texans don't regard Austin as a part of their state, and Austins don't regard their city as a part of Texas. So, frustrated atheist over there in the side chat may have something to say about that, but we'll hang on for a while, and then you've mentioned a couple of names that are going to be coming up. Um,
Yeah.
that being AOC, that being Omar, that being a few of the.
The
Are,
squad, so to speak.
yes. Are there any indications of how their employment status is looking?
Honestly, I wouldn't be particularly worried about, like, as far as I know, I don't know of any reason to think of any member of the squad as being super likely to go away. Um, I think that their rise to national prominence, especially the meteoric, like the almost superhuman rate at which they became national figures, is probably something that's going to at least affect the elections, because I can't imagine that AOC's only donations are coming to her from New York. That's not a bad thing. I'm happy about the fact that someone who is in a national seat of power and is a Democrat and is fighting so hard has support from all over the country. I can imagine that her Republican opponents and maybe even someone who tries to primary her, because AOC specifically does have a primary challenger. She's not
Yes.
just going up against a Republican, and her challenger is really boring and is a pastor, which isn't my only reason for disliking him. But among other things, this man has said that like AOC doesn't understand prayer, and that's part of the reason why he wants to run. And I'm just like, well, it's a good thing she's not a pastor then. Maybe you should go be a pastor. Maybe you should teach her about prayer and not try to take her job. He's also said that he's a centrist, which is just the worst. Just yikes.
Yes, absolute yikes.
There was a really extensive religion news article on him if anyone feels like reading it. I personally like Religion News Network, but also I am a journalist who talks about religion, so that might be why I like it.
Okay. Purple rhymes with orange says something very salient over on the side. Unless voter turnout in the general exceeds 70%, 35% is a winning hand. Can we see any trend toward increasing turnout because of what's happened over the last couple of years? Um, I know that nothing is written in stone. We can't be confident of
Mhm.
anything, but are things looking good for a better turnout than we had, say, in 16?
So I know that there have definitely been efforts by Democrats to increase voter turnout. In fairness, I'm going to say this because it's true for both parties. Republicans have also tried to do this in their own ways, but Democrats have worked both in the courts and out of the courts to strike down, among other things, restrictions that would make it harder to vote. I know in both 2016 and 2018, there was efforts that were made to reverse the trend against felon disenfranchisement, which for those of you who've never heard that word, there's lots of states in the country where it is extremely difficult, if not outright impossible, for someone who has a felony on their record to regain their right to vote, even if they are out of the prison system and they are considered otherwise completely rehabilitated. It can still be extremely difficult for them to sort of re-enfranchise themselves.
Mm-hmm.
There are some politicians who have wanted to make it possible for people to vote even in prisons, which is my personal position. I understand that that's not the most popular position, but I do think that just because you commit a crime, I don't think that that should make you lose your right to vote. That's never made sense to me. I don't like that position.
Okay, now there's something interesting with the so called First Step program that
Mhm.
our friends in the White House seem to be supporting. Do you see any hope for the future with that, or is that just another sleight of hand?
So I am highly suspicious that legitimate efforts to do away with felon disenfranchisement will come from current Republicans. I think it's possible. I know for a fact that some Republican voters agree with me and agree with other Democrats on this issue that it's fundamentally undemocratic and un-American to take away someone's right to vote just because they committed a crime. But those people are not the people who are in power, and it's one of those areas where the differences between the voters and the politicians is very apparent. Um, I know that there are Democrats who are going to make I know that there are Democrats who are going to make this sort of thing a major point of theirs. I know that during the Democratic primary this year, there have been major fights that have broken out between people like Senator Cory Booker and Senator Bernie Sanders about felon disenfranchisement and about like the sorts of different ways that we discuss it. So I do think that it's going to be an issue in the 2020 general election, but I don't believe that Republicans, at the very least the ones right now, are willing to take the full steps needed, even if they're willing to start walking in that direction. And I'm sure some of them are willing to at least start that walk.
Okay, so
I'm
that's
optimistic.
semi hopeful. Let's put it that way.
Sorry for the long answer, but
No,
I
no.
wanted to be there.
Hey, the longer your answer is, the less hard I have to work to keep this conversation going. Okay.
I mean, politics is my thing. I'm very happy to be here.
Yay!
I'm loving this. This is a chance for me to talk about like something that I want to do. I want to run for office. So
Oh my! Now, okay. Let's take a little bit of a sidetrack there. And you're talking about you would like to run for office.
yeah.
Is that any time in the near future? I mean, might I see your name in the papers?
I wouldn't be running for Congress. I am about to turn old enough to run for Congress. I'm turning 25 in less than a week, which is
Happy
the
birthday
minimum
to
age.
you.
Thank you. My birthday is November 16th, which is next Saturday. You have to be 25 bare minimum to be able to run for big office, to be able to put the big C next to your name.
Hmm.
I don't want to do that. I want to do that in the future, but I don't want to do that right now. Specifically, what I want to do is probably run for Greensboro City Council, and I'm pretty sure that you also have to be 25 to run for Greensboro City Council, but I might be wrong. It might be like 20 or 18. I haven't actually checked that yet.
Okay, because yeah, I remember ages can be all over the place. Back when I was at uni the first time around, I was in Marietta, Ohio, and the person who ran for and won the mayor's seat was either 18 or 19.
Yeah, I know. So some cities have it different, and there are plenty of cities where there's actually no like minimum age as long as there is a minimum age, but the minimum age is like 18. That's the way that it is in lots of cities across the country, which really surprises a whole lot of people.
Okay, then, yeah, because have there been a couple rather young
Mhm.
office winners just recently, within the past
I
cycle or two?
I know that in 2016 there were a couple of really young people who I think might have been younger than I am now, but I think that they were the extreme minorities. I don't know if I don't actually know if there was anyone who was my age who won a seat. I know that there's someone who's only a little bit older than me who's running to be the next youngest congresswoman. She's like a Mexican American person who's younger than AOC. I
Okay,
believe that
then.
she's 26, and she's also in Texas. Yeah.
Yay! That's a very good thing. Yeah, let's get to work on Texas.
I'll see if I can like find her name and put it in like a comment after the video because I would have to like really look away from the computer to search it.
Oh, and that kind of reminds me. Did we cover her yet or not? The trans woman who won re-election.
So I actually don't know enough about the specifics of her race to be able to comment super intelligently on it. But since she won re-election, that's a really good sign for queer Congress people all over the country. And I would be a queer Congressperson. I know that if you ran for office, you would also be a queer Congressperson.
Oh boy, would
It's really helpful.
I!
I think it's funny because both of us would be like, yeah, no, we'd be very LGBT.
Yeah, and probably one of the biggest stumbling blocks in our way, and that's why I was heading this way. Is with her reelection,
Mhm.
is there that little bit of a chance that we might see some cracks in the armor appearing, and the opposition might not be as much as it was a little while ago?
Oh, the opposition is definitely decreasing. If I want to be super grim, and there's a part of me that wants to be just because it's kind of funny to say what I'm about to say next. Some of the people who most hate the idea of queer Congress people, regardless of what type of queer Congressperson you would be, whether you'd be gay, ace, bisexual, trans, or any of the other just letters that are now in that beautiful acronym. I love that it keeps growing. It makes me happy. But like some of the people who would most hate us are people who are just gradually dying off. It's not a super fast thing. I'm always weary of people who are just like, yeah, by the time I run for office, the people who hate me are going to be dead. That's not true. There's plenty of young homophobes out there.
Oh yes, oh yes.
But a lot of the like most ferocious competition are people who are either dying or somehow people who've discovered the secret to immortality by like feeding off of the hatred that they embody. People like Pat Robertson, who is Pat Robertson still alive? I'm pretty sure he's still
I'm pretty
alive.
sure he's still around. There is a portrait in his attic that's getting older.
I thought that like what he did was he did like a Danny Phantom style shenanigan where he's just like feeding off of young people. He gets them into like his church or something, and then he just like feeds off of their youth.
Okay, that could be. That could very well be. Yeah, the cases of progeria might not be genetic diseases or anything like that. Yeah. Oh my. Yeah. Kate, Bionic Dan says a wonderful thing. She says over here, LGBTQWTFBBQ. I love that. Yeah. I mean, are there any letters that we're not using yet?
I mean,
What would Z
I can think
stand
of
for?
several letters that we're not using. We're not using Z. We're not using J. I had to think for a second. Yeah, we're not using J. We're not using H. So I mean, we're getting there. We're
Okay.
working our way up.
We've got to come up with a few classes and everything like that. And
I mean, look, that's what a lot of people seem to think the A is. They seem to think that the A is something new and not something that's been around since before the days of like the what was the Jesus, I feel really bad. Stonewall. Like
oh, right, right.
asexuals have been around since the days of Stonewall. There was like an op-ed that came out that explicitly acknowledged asexuals by name in like the early 70s and was like, hey, they were with us at Stonewall. We're going to be there with them. And it sure would be nice if people remembered that, but what you going to do?
Oh my! From Tornado in a Junkyard. Wait a minute. Luciano knows about Danny Phantom. Sweet.
Danny Phantom's awesome. I was raised in Latin America, but I wasn't raised like under a rock. I had TV, guys. Also, I'm like 25. I'm almost 25. Like when I was still like watching TV and watching cartoons is when Danny Phantom came on. So yeah.
Oh, look, Hansen reminds us we're still not using the extra letters in other languages, like the slashed O and the AE and the A with the I forget what that little circle is um, over it. Yeah, okay, we're gonna have to work on that one too.
Hey, we don't even have to use those fancy letters. Spanish has the double R in our alphabet. Like that's a letter in the Spanish alphabet, just two R's next to each other.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that was a letter. I thought it was two
Yeah.
separate letters. Okay, then. Yeah, that's really great election stuff we're talking about right now, isn't it?
we
Um,
It's true. But I mean, I think that this is good though, because it is ultimately true that the number of people who are like adamantly anti-LGBTQ are gradually decreasing.
yes.
It's not a fast thing. There's still plenty of homophobes out there. Some of them are more than happy to do things like violently attack queer people, so it's not safe. And it's going to take a long time, especially since we have to deal with Trump and the aftermath of Trump before queer people are truly safe in the society. But we are inching there slowly.
Slowly, and that's the big thing. I think I alluded to it earlier. It's going to be a real mess even once we get the names out of their respective offices. Say we get Trump out of the Oval Office. Say we get McConnell out of the Senate Majority Leadership. When say even flip the majority someday, that would be really nice in the Senate. Well, keeping the House majority, but there's still the electorate that got us where we are in 2016. Not that we were
Yep.
not already heading there in one way or another, but they finally tipped the scales. And one of the big things is that the rest of the world has lost their confidence in us, and the big reason is those people who installed what we've got right now, and we're gonna have to live with it. I hope not for decades and decades, but I unfortunately have a feeling that we will. Do you have any ideas about that?
The aftermath of Trump being elected. And there were a range of multinational events that showed so many of the flaws with a system like a democracy. And I'm not abdicating, I'm not saying that there are systems that are better than a democracy. I'm saying that there are very real flaws that we need to acknowledge within a democratic framework. One of the big things that I can think of isn't just that we have a democratic system where we elect the person who got the second most number of votes. That's a real problem, but that's not even what I'm talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
Take, for example, the Iran nuclear deal. And not just the Iran nuclear deal. If you are like, I understand that's controversial for some people. So I'll do something that's a little bit less controversial. Say the Paris Climate Accords. Yeah. I think
Okay.
that's probably a better
A
example.
little less controversial, yeah.
But like, let's look at it and let's look at the fact that Donald Trump is in the process of trying to get us out of it. Now, actually leaving the Paris Climate Accords for a range of reasons that are a little bit too complex to get into in this conversation about the election that just happened, it's a little bit more complicated than just saying, hey, we're leaving, especially because it was a non-binding thing for which there were no punishments. So us leaving was just a big show. But like, that's one of the problems with a democracy that doesn't have hard locks in place. And what I mean by that is that if a person who wins their election disagrees strongly enough with the person who last held their office, they can undo so many of the things that person did so easily.
Yes.
Donald Trump's biggest like campaign style has been to undo the things that Obama did.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm not someone who's super fond of Obama. I'm much further to the left than Obama ever was. And I strongly disagree with his foreign policy, among other things.
I'm with
And I
you.
don't think that Donald Trump did every single thing in the world that was evil. I think there were accidentally some things he did that weren't bad. But the overwhelming majority of the stuff that he did and the stuff that he's doing is horseshit. 99.98% of it is just, it's just horseshit.
It's poo-poo.
So
yeah.
we're going to have to deal with the fact that he was able to do this so easily because our system is weak. There's lots of stuff going on that if we had even a better democracy, it wouldn't have been super possible to do, or at the very least, he wouldn't have been able to do as easily and as efficiently. And that sucks.
Yeah. Okay, let's finish this.
I'm now looking at the comments, so I
Yeah.
missed a lot.
Pie Parrot or Pipero or whatever that is taking off, so I'm kind of saying goodbye there. And yeah, come on back next week, and hopefully we'll have a little bit of a different topic coming up. And okay, I did it again. I lost where I was going. This is. I need to use that notebook. Yes, absolutely. Oh, checks and
Purple, yeah, checks and balances. I was about to bring up that comment too.
do it.
Um, so checks and balances are a funny thing because they really didn't work when Donald Trump first won. And then because we immediately hated how awful Donald Trump was during the next election, we kicked out some of his strongest supporters and we replaced them with people who in some cases weren't great and in other cases were just pretty cool people. And because of that, we regained a minor check. But the reality is, you brought up a really good point earlier when you were talking about the fact that we were already going the way of Donald Trump even before Donald Trump like won.
Absolutely.
We had already lost the Senate. I believe we were about to lose the House, and then we did lose the House, and we lost the House, and we gained Donald Trump at the same time. And then Donald Trump took over the judiciary, and Donald Trump has elected and gotten passed. He's nominated and gotten passed the highest number of federal court appeals judges in decades.
Yes.
Because he knows that he might not win, but he wants to make sure that Republicans stay in power for as long as possible. And it just sucks because it really weakens our whole system.
Yeah. Because yeah, as you say, with the courts can reverse legislation, can reverse actions taken basically at whim. We've already got a situation where, isn't it that the beer boy Kavanaugh and Alito have been asked to recuse themselves over some decisions coming up, and I believe they involve us queers, because they happen to belong to anti-queer group or groups or something
Yep.
like that. Yeah, um, and I am quite sure that the senators who confirmed Kavanaugh at the very least, and the Trump that nominated him knew about this affiliation and approved very highly of it. Um, so okay, and I lost it again. I'm looking for? Oh, the checks and balances. There we are.
Yeah.
What can we do, if anything, about the fact that in many cases there is no recourse after somebody either screws up or does not do their job? Let's look at Kentucky, where you had Kim Davis, and she could not be removed because of the wording of Kentucky's law. Um, and the voters installed her. The voters had to remove her. Bevin would not do a damn thing. Um, is there anything we can do to even begin to shore that up?
Yes. So none of it's easy because in politics, nothing is easy. But among other things, we could expand the number of people on the Supreme Court, which is that's the judicial equivalent of the nuclear option. And I
Yes.
understand that. I'm not saying that this is an easy thing to do. That's the reason I preface this with being like, hey, this is hard. Another equally hard thing is we could impeach Kavanaugh at the very least. I think it would probably be harder to impeach Gorsuch, and I don't think either of them are going to get impeached. But I do think that one, there's a much bigger case to make for impeaching Kavanaugh because Kavanaugh has actually done things that are just legitimately impeachable, and also there's support for impeaching Kavanaugh. That's just a reality. Do I think that this is stuff that's going to happen? No, I don't. Because the Democrats, I'm speaking as a Democrat, the Democrats don't have the will to do what it takes to actually fix the system that we live in.
You noticed? Yeah. And this is one of the things that really pisses me the hell off. I'm going to try to tone it down a little bit here because.
I cussed earlier, it's fine.
Okay, so this pisses me the fuck off. Because the people, and here it is, people my age, for example, who hold a Democratic affiliation, are still going toward center or even center right, and don't have the will to really do what it takes. Kate, when you have complained about the way things go or don't go, I'm with you on a lot of that. Bionic Dance and I have talked about this sort of thing on previous shows. The only thing is, how do you get to a point where we can actually do something? And by the time we get to do something, is it going to be too damn late for it to be effective?
Oh, it's already too late. But what we can do now is we can make it slightly more bearable for the people who are going to be left in the ashes of whatever becomes of the United States. Because the reality is, at some point, the United States as a country right now is going to fall apart. We should be honest. We should recognize this. I think that there were lots of people who were both on the right and on the left. I think there were a lot more people who were a lot more hesitant to acknowledge this before 2016. And I think that 2016 has awoken a sort of fatalism in people that, if properly taken care of and like used intelligently, would probably be a good thing, because like this sort of fatalism means that we're wondering about the future. We're not just wondering about like ourselves. We're wondering about who will be left behind and how we can make things less miserable for the people who survived the United States. And I don't know if it's going to happen in my lifetime, but I can guarantee you, probably before the end of 2022, if we even still have a planet then, which is also a good question.
Yes, it is.
Like the United States as it is right now, with 50 states, probably won't exist. It just won't. It's already lasted just a long time, just a while. And in all honesty, if someone's like, "Hey, maybe it's time that the United States stop," I'm like, you know what? I don't really disagree with you. I would need more specific details to tell you whether or not I'm like against your version of it stopping. But I mean, the idea of the United States just stopping isn't a bad one.
Okay, so you would not necessarily support the U.S. becoming an autocracy with me as the autocrat?
I mean, okay, if it's you as the autocrat, I would need to know about your policies because I'd have questions. Not the least of which being like, hey, I don't disagree with this outcome, but how exactly did we get here?
Okay, yeah.
I
Oh
think that's
my.
a fair question. If I became an autocrat and someone's first question was like, hey, what happened? I'd be like, you're right. I don't know either.
Okay. Yeah. Granny Bonsoir over there, better known as Jen Morgan, says the planet will be fine. Humans will be gone. Yeah.
I'm concerned about that, though. I don't want the humans to be gone.
Well, I don't mind that the humans are gone. It's what the humans have to go through to get gone. I'd
Do you
really.
mean that we're in another planet, or do you mean that we're just gone? Because I'm more worried about the second one.
I am concerned at how uncomfortable getting gone will be.
Okay, I feel that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm probably going to be dead before we're gone, or at least I hope I will be. Um, but
Purple rhymes with orange is right. There is definitely an excellent chance the Democrats will self-destruct and lose the next election. That's true. The Democrats have a history of just really whiffing it at the last possible moment. So I mean, yeah.
yeah, and that's happy, happy, joy, joy for not only the 6 or 7 rational people left in North America, but for the rest of the world. As I alluded to earlier, the rest of the world doesn't trust us for anything anymore.
I'm concerned about the fact that they trusted us in the beginning, given what we did to countries that didn't have money. Like as a Latin American, and not just as a Latin American, but as a Puerto Rican very specifically, I'm just like, yeah, regardless of whether or not you have money, you really shouldn't trust the United States as a country. That's
Mm.
pretty much all of Puerto Rican history. Just a whole bunch of people being like, hey, maybe we shouldn't trust the United States. Not that we shouldn't trust Americans. Americans are fine. It's the government. The government is the problem.
Yes, it is. And we're not presented with any reasonable options as far as government goes. It's all the same oligarchs that are running the show, that are continuing things. It's really going to take a lot to reverse it, if it can be reversed at all. Um, I like Purple's idea here. U.S. splits into 4 countries by regions, and Canada, out of mercy, finally annexes the Upper Midwest. Uh,
So you'll join. So if I understand this correctly, you're saying that you'll join Godless Cranium and Zal and become an honorary Canadian.
oh hell yeah! I mean, yeah, I would actually run to Michigan were there a possibility that Canada would annex Michigan. I think
I
that would
live
be.
in North Carolina. I'm screwed either way.
There you go. I mean,
Oh man, if the Bible Belt becomes its own country, oh god, I don't even want to think about that. That's just I I honestly don't know what I would do, but it wouldn't be fun. I would try to leave, but if I couldn't, I don't know what I would do. I would be stuck in despair. It makes me
there's
sad.
there's the interesting thing that I've heard some people make the comment of thinking of leaving, and I suppose if you're young enough, because if memory serves me, there are quite a few countries with age restrictions. If you're too
Hmm.
old, they won't let you in. And of course, you do have to have a little bit of the cash.
Yeah.
Um, and I wonder just how many can actually leave, and how many of us are going to be left to endure. Oh,
I'm
jeez.
I'm bilingual. So, and I almost have a master's degree. So, assuming the country doesn't like split in half by like tomorrow, I'd probably be able to go somewhere that's not as bad as the United States. And by not as bad as the United States, I mean certain parts of Central America. Like like Costa Rica or Panama. That would be nice.
Okay. Oh my, it's yeah. Purple says we'll establish a refugee camp in Minnesota. Oh my.
Granny is right, and that's the main reason. And the thing is, I'm two of those things. On the list that Granny provides, I'm two of the things, and there's like a fourth thing that should definitely be on that list, which is atheists, and I'm that too. And I'm like, oh no.
Oh yeah.
An independent Bible Belt means that I and my girlfriend would both probably be executed.
And okay, now when we're talking about people on the shit list, what's the best way to get these people involved? What's the best way to get these people fighting? Because so many have indeed given up. Um,
It's really hard because it's really easy to give up. That's probably the most insidious thing about all of this, about our just really fucked up political system. It's really easy to feel like you don't make a difference. And it's really funny that we're talking about this right now because in Kentucky, the race was decided by 5,000 votes. Like, that is not a lot of people. There are more people probably at my university, at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, probably on that campus right now on a Sunday than the number of people whose votes were needed to overturn that election. That is it's a really interesting thing to think about. And for some reason my English is like, hey, I know you've been talking for like an hour. What if I stop? Like so
well, if you switched to Spanish, I wouldn't necessarily be able to understand what you were doing. Oh
but
well.
I think that we need to make people realize that their votes count. And I think that no series of elections more effectively shows this than city council elections. But the thing is, city council elections and local elections, in plenty of cases, actually have solid turnout. Like it's really easy to think that these elections are the elections that don't have the most turnout. And that's true when you look at things on the macro scale, when you look at like the national participation. But when you actually break it down and you look at the states, you'd be surprised at just how many people get out and vote for their local elections, because those are elections they feel empowered in. Those are elections that they feel like their efforts matter. When someone writes a letter to the editor in a local newspaper, they're probably not going to be writing about the national election unless it's someone like me who is just a huge fucking nerd and just really likes politics. But if you're like a normal person, if you are a teacher or if you are a student and you want to get involved in your elections, you probably get involved with your local ones, which is good because those are the laws that most directly affect you, but it's not enough. We need to get people excited and we need to get people interested in being like, hey, your voice matters and your voice can change minds, not just your next door neighbors, but people in states that you've never been to.
Yeah, yeah. And even for me, that's half the country. Um, Kate has a very interesting comment. She says that her vote does not count. It spells though. That's a very good thing. Yeah, spelling is important. Yeah, that's how you write words, and write the right words. Such that are good words. And what the hell am I talking about? Oh my word! Oh man!
Depending on the election, it's pretty important that your vote not spell the letter R.
Yes,
Now,
absolutely.
I'm saying this very tentatively because one, I don't really like to be the person who does down ballot voting, which surprises people. I vote for independents and I vote for Democrats, although usually just Dems. There aren't many independents where I live. Um, but like for the most part, you should probably avoid R's that have parentheses around them. If you see that on your ballot, probably don't click it.
Right. That's very good reasons. Just go on to the next entry. Um, okay. Oh, here we are. So what you're saying is Zal Rock on Demand Zods needs to go into politics, reinvigorate the Liberal Party, and invade the U.S. Yeah. Okay. That'll be a good thing. I like it.
Saying what normal people do. That's true, Purple. It took me a second to understand what you're saying, but I do try to like specifically what I meant. I worded that a little bit badly. I try to not do down ballot voting, which is what lots of voters in my specific place do. Whether they do it for Republicans or they do it for Democrats, a lot of people where I live in Greensboro, North Carolina, do try to do down ballot voting. I have done down ballot voting, but when I do, it's because I actually believe in all of the candidates. I have often met the candidates that I am voting for because when you're in a city like mine, if you know where to look, you can figure out where the candidates are going to be. And you're going to get chances to meet with them face to face, and you're going to get to learn what they actually stand for. But yeah, you're definitely right. That wording was bad on my part. Thanks,
Okay,
fam.
then, yeah. It's just a shame that around here, a lot of the down ballot slots are uncontested.
Yeah.
Um, oh, Dave, down ballot is voting for people running for offices that are not the major offices, that are the smaller offices. Um, like voting for the city councilman on the ballot that also contains the presidential slot. Do I have
Yeah.
that right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Another meaning of down ballot voting, which was the one that I did, which was the one that I meant, is that down ballot voting is the act of voting for a party. It's the act of doing every single thing you can to vote for, whether it's Democrat or Republican. It's looking at the letters as opposed to like the names, and then voting for a specific letter.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
okay, there.
yeah.
Now, did they have that in the most recent elections in which you voted? I remember when I was young, this was the case, and here in Pennsylvania, it still is. There
Mm,
was a lever for that down ballot voting, so to vote Democrat all the way down. Pull
yeah.
this lever. You still do that?
So in Greensboro specifically, this is not the case in all cities in North Carolina, but in Greensboro specifically, not the party, the city elections are actually nonpartisan, which is really, really annoying. I actually don't like that. I personally do prefer partisan voting, which, like, not partisan voting. I prefer for, like, the party to be visible because not everyone has the time to get to know every single candidate, which is
Yeah.
one of the reasons why I'm kind of careful with the things I say. I was sloppy earlier. My bad. I will take the L on that one. But, like, a lot of people genuinely don't have the time to do the research for like if you want to vote for like your local judge, which is an incredibly important thing to vote for. It's also really stupid that our judges are elected. That's weird. But like if you are in a place that elects judges, which most of us are, then you probably don't have the time to get to know every single name on that list. And it's difficult to do the amount of research needed to. So seeing the partisan stuff is definitely helpful if you don't have the time to do research and you aren't like me, who actually like does probably an unhealthy amount of political research, if I'm being completely honest. I have the opposite problem of a lot of my other friends.
Oh, and then Purple Rains with Orange reminded me of why I didn't associate down ballot voting with voting for the letters. I remember
Yeah.
it as voting straight ticket.
Yeah, voting straight ticket's another way to talk about it too.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Purple's right. purposes, it can be worse when judges are appointed by, oh, I don't know, let's say the president. Uh,
The
so
system,
like
the United
that.
States just managed to be like, all right, so we're going to have a bad system for electing the president. We're going to have arguably a worse system for electing Congress. And then we're just going to say to hell with it when it comes to the judges.
Yeah,
Just
absolute,
really throw
absolute.
it out the window.
Now, I just want to check here. You mentioned that you've got places to see and people to do, or something like that, or
I mean, I'm ace, so I probably don't have people to do, but I
okay.
do have places. Unfortunately, yes, I'm not going to be able to be in the after party tonight. I am really sorry,
Oh,
but
no problem, no
yeah.
problem at all. I mean, we can still run a little bit of an after show because we never stay on topic around here with that anyway. But I guess you're probably going to be wanting to pack up and head out pretty soon here. So, can you let everybody know the sorts of things you're going to be doing in the near future?
Sure. So last month was just a real powder keg for me. I am currently sort of done with classes for like the time being. So I'm going to be making videos for a little bit.
Oh
I have
boy.
one more semester left in graduate school. Hopefully, that's real fingers crossed. I don't know if like double fingers crossed cancels it out, but it's a superstition, so whatever. So I am going to be making videos. I have a series that I write that I upload almost daily on a website called Royal Road, but it's a series where like the main characters are all villains and they're all bad people doing bad things.
Oh
So it's really
boy.
dark. If people are into that, I can share it in a comment, but it's over on Royal Road. It's a really long title, and I'm not going to say the full title here, but it's just type in a dark god in Royal Road and you'll find the story.
Sounds pretty
Yeah.
good. Um, okay, so I'm going to thank you extremely many much for coming by. I'd love to have you here, and everything, all the shows that you've been here have been extremely informative, and I've loved doing them with you. And this is a many much wonderful good thing. And yeah, as I say, let me go over here and grab the link again. We'll do a little bit of an after show. Let's try to keep it a little shorter than 10 hours this time.
Is that a thing that happened?
That happened a couple of weeks ago. Mom NATO and I especially got to talking and everything else. The whole damn thing was about 10 hours for the after show. And then it was an hour and a half on top of that for the regular show. And it was, yeah, I was working all day that day. But yeah, to let you guys know a little bit about what's going on, I am thinking at starting up an open chat during the week, and I think I will give it a try on Monday if you guys don't mind. Um, so, if you happen to come on over to the after show, let me know as what you think about it, and we'll see what happens from there. And okay, I want to thank everybody who is here and everybody who is not here. And Luciano, thank you for coming by many, many much. And from there,
I am currently sharing all the resources because one of the problems that I had was that I wasn't able to very effectively. I wasn't able to effectively like do two things at once. But I'm sharing the resources I mentioned. I'm sharing people's Twitter profiles. If you wanna follow some of the cool progressive people I follow, then yeah.
okay, then well, you're a little better than I am. I mean, you're having a hard time doing two things at once. I have a hell of a hard time doing one thing at once.
I feel that. I relate to it on a quasi spiritual level. I don't believe in spirituality, but if I did, I'd feel it.
Yay! I'll be throwing some links out or some. yes, I'm joining links out very shortly. And okay, if we're pretty much set, thanks a lot, troops.
I hope y'all had fun.
See you on the other
Bye.
side.